for you.
I learned that the reason why that voice comes on to say recording in progress is just in case any of you don't want to be recorded. And so you should know that I'm not going to be selling this underground, but it will be on YouTube. Do you know that we have a YouTube channel? That the Mosh Pit has a YouTube channel. So if you ever want to refer to anything, I don't record everything. As a matter of fact, I didn't record most of the Reb Zalman book. But when somebody asks me to record it, that's where it goes. And if you want to subscribe to the channel, just go to YouTube, find the Mosh Pit, and subscribe to the channel, and you'll know when I put something new on there. Okay. So let us begin with what else but a bracha, a blessing for, of course, Torah study. It ends with la'asok b'divrei Torah. Everybody, Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So today we're going to begin on page 1415, bottom of 14, picking up where we left off last week with a tad review. As always, please interrupt me. Everybody else in my house does, so you should add your voice to that. And we're going to make our way probably hopefully at least to the beginning of the chapter on Baruch, which is the beginning of the formula for the path of blessings. Alrighty, so here we go. Let's go to Rumi at the bottom of page 14, and he's going to remind us where we left off last week. This teaching, so fundamental to the Jewish practice of blessing, is movingly reflected as well in the poetry of Rumi. And what Reb Marsha is referring to, when we fail to praise, it is we who suffer. So Rumi teaches, quote, your depression is connected to your insolence and refusal to praise. I have to wonder who he's talking to. You know, all the Rebbes, especially the Hasidic Rebbes, they had followers, and for many of them, they didn't write down their books. You know, what it was their followers who wrote it down, because most of their teachings were on Shabbos. And so after Shabbos, the followers would rush off and remember what they could and write down what they said. And so when you're studying a specific Hasidic master, oftentimes they're speaking right to those students, and so you have to know the context and the times in which they live. So I'm wondering what the situation, the context of Rumi saying this. But anyway, he goes on and says, whoever feels himself walking on the path and refuses to praise, that man or woman steals from others every day, is a shoplifter. So remember our conversation where we left off last week. If we refer to God as Koneh HaKol, the one who is the owner or the landlord of all, everything belongs to God, then if you don't say a bracha, in some houses, some kids grow up with that expression, make a bracha, you know. If you don't make a bracha, it's literally like stealing. You've stolen something that does not belong only to you. And you are not acknowledging the source of that you which about to imbibe. So did any reflections from last week? Deborah, please.
I just wanted to know, what do you think he's referring to depression as in mental health depression?
I don't know. I really don't know here. I'm wondering whether this is someone who is walking around feeling bad about himself, has a sense of, no sense of self-worth. Your guess is as good as mine.
Okay.
Because depression, words are funny. In Hebrew, the expression for patience is erech hapayim, It's also savlanut. But erech apayim, you hear the word erech apayim is like punam in payim. It's like long faced, like a horse. You know, the way like, and so when you're looking like long face, and I'm not meaning sad, it means that you're kind of contemplating things and sitting with things as they are, right? So patience. So maybe the word depression is translated from another, obviously from Sufi is not speaking in, Ruby's not speaking in English. So I don't know is the answer to the question. But I think that we can assume that Reb Marsha is picking up from this where we left off from last week. So any of you a little more aware of your bracha practice, if you have one or don't have one, when you were eating this week? Due, of course, to our very holy conversation last week. Should I take that? Chaya, you.
One of the most profound statements that my spiritual their counselor said to me was the emptying of fetch is enlightenment, which I found so profound that I wrote it down. And so I've studied positive psychology, and one of the factors is gratitude. If you write 5 things that you're grateful for, it tends to increase your mood. Mm-hmm. and decrease your sadness and depression. So it's like revealing the godness, the holiness in every moment by praising.
Thank you. And that's important. It's one of the my practices when I'm working with a mushba, a spiritual companion. Do you happen to keep a gratitude journal? And if that person hasn't, I'm working with a woman right now who every time we meet, that's the way she starts. Thank you very much for urging me to keep a gratitude. It has changed my life, literally. So this, the idea of stop, don't kvetch, right? Although, kvetching is good and has its time and place too. But the idea that gratitude leads us into moachin de gadlut, a greater expansiveness of our consciousness, is certainly to keep in mind. At the bottom of this page now, 15, she asks, what does it mean to bless, right? Somebody sneezes, what do we say in Hebrew? Labriyut, to your health, right? So, but it doesn't mean bless you. If we have to say bless you, she says, that the expression has its roots in the hope that the words will ward off evil, right? To bless someone is to wish the person good fortune or to pray that divine providence will be favorable. But why then would someone offer a blessing to God? It seems absurd. God doesn't need blessing in any way. How could a human being bring God good fortune? Well, that's a sheila tova. That's a good question. Does God really need us to bless God? And theologically, that's going to get us in all kinds of, we're going to get all wrapped up in all different kinds of problems if we start thinking about that in our left brains. So a lot of what we're talking about here, we just need to let go of our need to understand to understand that question that she's asking, because it's not about a God in heaven with the white beard that's going to punish us if we don't bless God for how great God is. I don't think that God has that kind of ego. Is God full of God's self? Well, it says, Melo chol haaretz kavodo, the whole world is filled with God's presence, but that's something entirely different, right? Alrighty. We are on our way, yeah. Rachel.
We also, every time something, I don't know how many times a day I say Toda La'el. Toda La'el. Toda.
Translate that for people, please.
Toda Lael is thank God.
Right.
And I'm sure I mean, I say it in Hebrew because I speak Hebrew, but in English you say thank God. So how many times a day everybody says thank God, and it is thanking God for not falling down, for not burning the food, which I do every time. But the second time I don't burn it, I said thank God. And I mean, for everything, for my dog getting to feel better, it's just you say thank God for everything.
Can you quickly, like, give us a short answer to the question? How did you grow up? What was your house?
How what?
Yeah. What was your home like? Did you grow up with that? Uh, if you were Chiluni,
No.
if you're Dati, like,
I, I was I was from a Syrian family, and they are very uh, Orthodox, but not Orthodox the way the Orthodox, Ashkenazic are. It's a little bit more free, but very Orthodox. I mean, my dad went to the synagogue 3 times a day,
mhm.
walked 3 times a day to the synagogue, and don't even tell him, you don't feel good, maybe you stay home. And you looked at you like, what? So and of course, the house was kosher, and it was very religious house. Hmm?
Thank you for sharing that. And also, I think that that's one of the important things we need to hear from each other when we're together, is what's the context of our lives, and from which we are offering our comments. And we get to know each other a little bit too, which is wonderful. So Toda Lael, if you walk around saying that enough times during the day, you will have said all 100 blessings that you're supposed to say. If you're really giving thanks all the time. And the question that Reb Marsha is asking, does God need our blessings? No, but we do. Right? We need to be reminded over and over again. So we have living an intentional life, not taking things for granted. That everything is due to our hard work. So that's a whole. I'm opening up a theological bag there, but I don't necessarily want to go there. But to whom are you giving thanks to is an important question for you to ask, or for you to wrestle with. Actually, is a better way of putting it, in your lives. What is that about? To what? To whom? What is the I thou relationship, and who is, where is the thou? Dan, you wanted to
Well,
contribute something.
yeah, I mean, I understand Raquel's point about thanking and gratitude, which I can grab onto wonderfully, both psychologically and spiritually. Where I run into trouble is what Reb Marsh is saying in terms of blessing God. I almost would prefer it in the opposite way. We are blessed. We are blessed with God, we are blessed with the world, our food, our this or that. There's something about the transitive nature of the word which I still have, struggle with.
So it's a good point to raise. So think of how others have contextualized that. As we bless the source of life, so we are blessed. It's kind of like an ecosystem, within its right. Scott is making a circle. What's that called when the rains come down and the mist rises? That we learned that in like elementary school. What's that called?
I don't know. I'm only thinking of the itsy bitsy spider.
A water cycle?
A water cycle, exactly. Thank you, Nancy. It's like a water. It's a water. It's a cycle. It's a cycle. It's an energetic cycle, is what it is.
Yeah.
Right. And if it's more important that we feel it as opposed to understand it. Because remember what Reb Zalman of blessed memory says all the time: Judaism is highly intellectualized and underexperienced. right? So we got to grab the experiences and not be so worried about, articulating them. And the poet in us, the Rumi in us, attempts to do that. Dan, you're talking, but I don't hear you.
That's because I'm just mouthing because I didn't want to talk.
Okay.
No, the word praise I also struggle with, because again, it's a transitive word to praise someone, which I struggle with. But if you translate, I mean, this would be hallelujah, right?
Right.
Which if you translate it as wow.
No, hallelujah is praise, Dan.
No, I know, but I don't like the word praise. But if you
Well, tough.
if you translate it as wow or I'm in awe, it
Right.
feels a little bit better because it doesn't have the same transitive of a someone out there.
So to that, I'm going to say, if it works for you, go with it.
Which is
Good.
what Raquel just said, which is tough.
That's right. Exactly. And you know, my mission in life, Dan, is to jam your left brain.
Right, exactly.
You know, yeah, Baruch is not really transitive. It doesn't say we are blessing God. It says God is blessed. Now, is that different or not? We could debate that, but it's just making a statement about God, actually.
So if you translate it in a different framework, it's not a bless you. We are blessing you. Okay.
You gotta be careful, Dan, if you go like that, because you might end up going like that.
Yeah, I've done that before.
Let's turn to page 16. We're in the middle. When we offer blessing, interesting, in quotations, to the source of blessing. And I think she's referring to what she was just talking about. I think she's responding to your problem here, Dan. We offer our gratitude not only for a particular gift, but for the opportunity to experience our connection with the whole of life. And I think there is the key. We say a bracha to open the portal to connection, to the relationship. It's like if I call you any of your names, right? Deborah, if I call your name, you're going to perk up, right? You're going to look up. I think energetically the same thing is going on with this thing we call God, this thing we call love, right? Which is what my imagination pulls me to when the text says in many places, God inclined God's ear. Really? I got to get into this anthropomorphic God, and I have to embrace that. So there's something about the universe listening in that, for those of you who have done spiritual direction, you know what I'm talking about. But anyone who's been in any kind of intimate relationship knows when the voice becomes very quiet and you start whispering to the person who's right there by you, they have to lean in. That's my relationship with my God, right? And I hope, it's the opposite of put the coin into the vending machine, right? And for me, that works. But you all have to come up with your own, metaphors and your own working relationships. Our bracha opens up to the shefa of divine goodness moving through us, filling us, and flowing back to life, flowing back to God. Moving through us, filling us, and flowing back to God. There's that water cycle, Nancy, right? Read that again. Our bracha opens us to the shefa, which is divine flow, of divine goodness moving through us, filling us, and flowing back to God. Shefa does mean divine flow. For me, it also is all about aliveness, right? The song that we sing sometimes on Shabbos morning, and who is this aliveness I am? Is it not the Holy Blessed One? It's this feeling that there is an aliveness that is enlivening me, that is animating me, not like a puppet is animated, but that's the life force that is living through me, yearning to make itself known in this world. Because the hiddenness of God is also a mainstream part of Chassidut. The hiddenness and the accessibility of divinity, hiding, not like in hide and go seek, but that's also a nice metaphor to use. That God is playing this game with us, and that's fun to play, right? Here I am, you're getting warmer, and when you get really hot, you'll know. We create the mental constructs. We're on the next paragraph towards the end of the page. Objectifying the world and obscuring its godliness. On the path of blessing, we're reminded the whole world is an expression of divine energy. I'm wondering whether that is also what idol worship is about. Meaning that when we create mental constructs objectifying everything, we think we know what everything is. And most importantly, in our relationships, when we know somebody for a long time, oh, there goes Rachel. I know Rachel. I know how she's going to react. Our mates do this to us all the time, and we do it to ourselves, right? And we get stuck, and then we get seen in the way that we've been up to our 67 years of life, giving away my age. And we can't battle, we can't fight our way out of that box. That becomes concretized. It's an objectifying even ourselves and each other, and obscures the godliness, this flow, this godliness that is seeking to potentiate, is that the word? Is that a word? To potentialize itself of what it was always meant to be from the seed that created it. And as a gardener, that to me is the miracle of the garden.
Actually,
Does the seed know what it's supposed to be, right? I think the same is true for us. And so on the path of blessing, we're reminded the whole world is an expression of divine energy moving through us, filling us, and returning to its source. I did make a note that I wanted to share with you. Maybe I'll wait on that. The opportunity to experience our own connection, that was on the page before. What psukim, what comes to mind? And I already mentioned one today, speaks to this, that God is within everything. Anybody? What line of Torah or line of Tanakh?
Tzelem Elohim,
I'm sorry.
God speaks the world into existence.
Ah, lovely, lovely. Baruch she'amar v'haya ha'olam.
And that we're made in God's image.
Say it again, Mary Rita.
That we're made in God's image.
That we're made in God's image.
When Yaakov says God was in this place and I did not know it.
I didn't even write these down, but they're all, yeah, they're more than hinting at. They're calling out to us that this nowness that we are experiencing right now is filled with that. So Maloch ha'aretz kavodo is what I said before, right? That's from Yeshayahu, from Isaiah. The whole world is filled. It's, if you look at the prayer book, it's filled with God's glory. But presence is a better, for me, unpacking of kavod in this case, in that pasuk. Others are from Zohar, mimale kol olmim, v'sovev kol olmim. Mimale kol olmim, that God fills, right, all existence, all worlds. You hear olamim in there, olmim. V'sovev, and God, like Sivivon, so Chanukah, Huchakta, right? It spins, so it surrounds, it's spinning around everything. That's kind of nice, the idea that divinity is spinning around, because that's it's more animated in a way than that surrounding everything. But that too also works. And the third one that I wrote down was Ein od milvado. There is none other beside God, right? And that's in Aleinu. Sometimes people will sing Ein od milvado, Ein od milvado Hashem Hua Elohim. So the one who there's nothing beside, if you think about just the mental image of that, I can stand beside you, so we're standing beside each other, but there's nothing beside divinity, because divinity fills and animates all creation, fills and surrounds all. Alrighty. Let's look at the Cordovero on the bottom of page 16, and then a teaching that I know I've shared, a story actually that I've shared about Rabbi Rami Shapiro a number of times, but it's always bears repeating. Would somebody read the teaching of, at the bottom of page 16, the 16th century Kabbalist? Go ahead, Deborah.
Great. The 16th century Kabbalist Rabbi Moshe Cordovero said, "The essence of divinity is found in every single thing. Nothing but it exists. Since it causes everything to be, no thing can live by anything else. Do not say this is a stone and not God. God forbid. Rather, all existence is God, and the stone is a thing pervaded by divinity."
Everything that ever was, everything that is, everything that will be, filled with divinity from those divine sparks from before there was a before, right? And we've got to get ourselves back to the garden. Haf. That's what Tikkun Olam, by the way, is all about. It's repairing, finding the sparks and returning them to its source. Yeah, Haf.
Anytime you start quoting Woodstock, I have to get into the.
Of course.
This is kind of obvious, but it really struck me the other night because I was having dinner for the first time with a bunch of friends, all vaccinated, out on the back porch. And I didn't count it, but I was amazed at the number of gratitudes and blessings that were flowing during the course of the night. And obviously it was a reaction to the opening up and the post-pandemic feelings that we had. And it was great, really great. But it strikes me as we're talking now that the real trick of the trade is not to wait for the pandemic to happen, but to be able to see the blessing and the gratitude on an ongoing basis all the time, and not have to be reminded, which it's good that people got there, but it's a heavy way to have to get there, as opposed to the gratitude and appreciation as it was said, in every stone or whatever. So it's a good reminder to get back to the garden.
And this is the gift that we've been, of our inheritance. We've been given these spiritual tools, right? We forget. And this week's Parsha, Shalach Lecha, is all about remembering, because we're going to tie the tzitzit this Shabbos. And tzitzit all about remembering. Oh, did I see somebody's hand up? Okay. So the Rabbi Rami, you all know who Rabbi Rami Shapiro is. If you don't, it's a really truly unique Rav, and he tells a story, and I think it's in the beginning of his book on loving kindness, where he's in rabbinical school, and he's written a paper, a theology paper, and he's called into the office by his supervisor, and his supervisor is all like up in arms, and he says to Rami, Mr. Shapiro, everything you write here proves that you are a megalomaniac. You think that you are God, because he's writing about the things we're discussing, right? And Ravi, without hesitating, he says, no, no, no. You see, you're wrong. I don't think that I'm God. I know that I'm God. So if God is within everything, obviously God is within us, is the little leap from there. And so I always think of that Rami story. Rami wrote the words to We Are Loved by an Unending Love that Rabbi Shir Yaakov put the beautiful music to. But that is another book, by the way. Maybe it'll be the next book on our list, The Path of Loving Kindness, in which Reb Rami, Scott, you're nodding your head. It served as a Bible for me for several years, in which it's so marked up that I would take it out on walks in the morning and read a sentence or two, and then just meditate on that as on my walk, and saw the world through his lens. What he does, he takes each of the words in the Shlosha Srei Midot, and the 13 attributes, and he breaks it down, just in the way that Reb Marsha, if we ever get to it, does in this book here. Rachel.
But Rami would have done much better if he said, I know I'm God, and I also know that you are God.
I'll give you his email address. You can write to him. And actually, I don't have his email address, but I thought that was a clever thing to say.
I was just happy because you talk about books that I've already read, and then I don't feel like I have homework.
Hi, you are not Mark. I'm sorry. Judy, welcome. You're right on time, Judy. Alrighty, so we're on page, page 17. And, so in the middle of the page, that is the whole world. Oh, let's go back a little. All the earth is filled with God's glorious presence. Okay, so she quotes from Ishayahu. I don't know how many of you experience, but I love it when I'm reading a book and I think of something like, oh yeah, Melochol Eretz Kavodo. And then the author says, yeah, Melochol Eretz Kavodo, like in the next page or the next line. It's like, oh yeah, I could have written this book, so why didn't I? Anyway. The whole world is filled with God's glory, glorious presence, she said. Oh no, this is quoting Rebbe Nachum of Chernobyl, disciple of the Baal Shem Tov. What it means, the whole earth is filled with God's garments. All physicality is an enrobing of divinity. Each subatomic particle of creation housing a spark of God. And we just talked a little bit about that. I just do want to mention that idea is and from the Psalm, but I can't remember which one it is. It says that no teshemayim hayira. I have to start from the beginning. So in the mornings, when we're putting on a talit, that is the line from Psalms that we say, Hod v'hadar, glorious and glory and splendor. You are lavashta, you are dressed in, you are garmented in. And no teshemayim ki yirah, you spread out the heavens like a curtain. So boy, if your imagination doesn't need to be fully engaged to embrace that, and to think of it, you're putting on this garment while we're talking, while we're saying the psalm about God dressed in a garment. And here, Rebbe Nachum is saying the exact same thing of how he unpacks Melochol Eretz Kavodo, that the whole earth is filled with God's garments. Somebody put that into different language. What is he saying exactly here? And the reason we're spending so much time on this is because when we get to the words of the bracha, we're going to really enter into what the bracha does energetically. So if we have a really nice foundation, when we say a bracha and we have all of those hyperlinks going off at the same time, what a blessing that would be. Or as Reb Zalman would say, how wonderful that would be. So what does that mean to you? Like, how does that rest in you? The whole earth is filled with God's garments. What is he saying? And we basically already touched on it. Hi, Phyllis, welcome.
While we were driving out the Southwest, I was just in awe because every moment was magnificent and full of awe. And I can imagine, I kept repeating over and over again, Psalm 121, that God is in the mountains. When you see that 240 million years of evolution and science produces just the most magnificent structures, humanity could never come close to the creativity, the artistry, the clothing, the color, every imaginable sense is in that place. And I knew God existed, whether it was in the Southwest and seeing the beauty of that, or being in the Northeast in the midst of winter and seeing everything coated with snow. I couldn't, to me, not believing that God existed was inconceivable.
So we can put that together. Thank you, Chaya, with Dan. Praise God. Wow. Right, Dan, you need to get yourself to a devotional church. I think, because when people yell "Praise God," for those of you who have davened with me, that's when I'm happiest, right? And for those local of us, who when we used to meet in person, when it turns into a revival. Because then we just forget about whether we're looking silly, we're acting silly, the childlikeness in us, that everything is alive, right? With that wowness, right? That you just described so beautifully, Chaya, right? There's a reason to give praise. Why give praise? Because we didn't build that. I keep coming back to President Obama. Somebody has their hand up.
Judy does. I have my hand up, Mark.
Yeah.
So I resonate with what we're talking about in terms of seeing God in the beauty of nature. And I also am thinking about the whole world is robed in God's glory, even the ugly parts. Right? So how do we understand God when we see people living in poverty or hunger, all of those things that are hard to look at? And the necessity to remember that God is there also.
Thank you, Judy. Early on in Masechet Brachot in the Talmud, you're supposed to praise God for the Tov and the Ra. Not be happy that these conditions arise, but because, like what you say, everything comes from God, right? And theologically, that is something more that is very, very challenging to get our heart around, no less our head. Practice each word of the. Okay, page 18. Ooh, we're getting close to the next chapter. The Kabbalistic Work, pre-Eitz Hadar, teaches us in these beautiful words how to focus our attention as we prepare to offer a bracha. The first time I read this, and every time I read this, the first thing that hits me is, wait, there's an intention for an intention. It's like, now we know how you can spend all day, in prayer, because there's never ending things to give thanks for or to be intentional about. Holy One of blessing, may it come to pass that through the sacred power of the fruit we are now eating and blessing. I'm thinking that the intent of this is that we are about to eat right? While we meditate on the secret of the flow of divine energy upon which they depend, which is talking about what I just said, right? That when we get to the finally ever, talking about the words of a bracha, we will have planted all of this, embedded all of this learning, and it'll be able to sink a little bit deeper. That the divine flow of blessing abundantly fill them. May the flow never cease, so that all will grow from the beginning of the year until its end, for abundance and blessing, for good life, for fulfillment and peace. And then she goes on to say, it's more than a thank you card. Sending blessing back to the source of blessing. With our bracha, we participate in the flow. There's the thing about relationship again. Yeah, you go, Dan. Nancy, I'm never going to forget water cycle. Not motorcycle, water cycle. Right? We participate in the flow of divinity through the world. Living a contemplative life. I think that's what we are being invited into. I readily share with you that my dive into the contemplative life, and I don't know if I would ever describe myself as a contemplative, but when I entered, it wasn't until I entered the Hashpa'ah program that I began to tap into that side of me that was always there. But if you knew Mark up until that point, you wouldn't describe me as a contemplative. You're so full of energy, so full of life, so talented, you're a great musician, right? You can lead services and this and that, right? You make me happy. Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha. But there's also simcha in the contemplative. So that's what I discovered for myself, where I feel a lot more balanced than I did before that. And the idea of making a bracha, of making this part of our life, I think is really that's part of the takeaway. If we're so blessed that we become more contemplative in every part of our lives, right, and more aware of how we affect not just ourselves and others, but the water cycle. All righty. Let me stop there. We're going to move to the next chapter, Language and God. Questions, comments, criticisms, songs, poetry, dances, yoga poses.
I note that your contemplative side has come across with your Wednesday afternoon meditations as well.
Thank you, Haf. And you know what? Deborah and Susan and Mary Reeder were there this afternoon. I'm going to see if I can pull up the quote. Yes, it's on my desktop. Because this is a perfect time. Oh, no, where is it? I thought it was on my desktop. The quote, I shared with everybody this afternoon that I saw a most incredible movie finally, The Shape of Water. Has anyone else seen it? At the end of The Shape of Water, there's a quote that, I thought I had, here it is. Okay. So this is exactly what we're talking about, right? This is a quote. This is the quote at the end of the movie. It was written by Guillermo del Toro, who was the director of The Shape of Water, but he based it on a poem by Sufi poet Hakim Sanai. And close your eyes just for a moment, because this is to experience Melocha Loretz Kavodo in these words. And allow yourself to receive these words, because this is, again, another piece of sacred text. Unable to perceive the shape of you, capital Y. Unable to perceive the shape of you, I find you all around me. Your presence fills my eyes with your love. It humbles my heart, for you are everywhere. Unable to perceive the shape of you, I find you all around me. Your presence fills my eyes with your love. It humbles my heart, for you are everywhere. Hallelujah. Wow. Someone put it into words. Yet another poet put it into words. And if you can swim in that, right? You're swimming in the stream. Your flow. You're in the flow. And allowing the shafa to move through. Because then it becomes less of an idea and more of a way of life, an attitude, deep understanding, a deep knowing that your eye is my eye. What did you say, Rachel, that Rami should have said? Say it again. I know that I'm God, and you are too. Yeah. We turn to page 20. If you haven't seen that movie, it's on Hulu. Get yourself a free month and watch it. Language. Bottom of page 20. Each letter is a garment. Jewish tradition invites us to approach the Hebrew language in a way unfamiliar to most speakers of Western languages. Just that the infinite light of God can be found radiating from within nature and all living things, so too we can find the light within the Hebrew letters. Each letter is also a garment. Again, this is one of those wonderful moments for me when when somebody who's a lot smarter than me confirms something that I've been just like living my life as an understanding for years and been teaching others. So there are members of my family who will go unnamed who think that gematria is shtuyot, is nonsense, right? The idea of assigning a number for a letter and then adding up the letters in a word and that leading to a deeper understanding of something else, which can be a rabbit hole, it's like a rabbit hole without the T. I admit that. But it points to a playful God, and that's the God I want. I want to be with God in God's sandbox. And so the way I've always understood it for myself is, well, we look at the periodic table and understand them to be letters and numbers that represent forces that when put together, they become stuff. Well, who was it early on? I think it might have been Chaya when you said Baruch she'amar v'haya ha'olam, right? What did God do in order to create the world? God spoke, which is why I created that poem. That half always goes like this with me, right? Every Shabbos. God spoke and the world came into being, right? It ain't no fairy tale. All you need to do is to live through that mythic adventure, through those eyes, which has been given to us. Much more fun. And it doesn't even go against the ideas in the Big Bang. It like rubs right up against it. They're partners, right? And so Hebrew letters are like, and then she says, Hebrew letters are like atoms of creation energy. Oh, God, thank you, Reb Marsha. I've been saying that like for years. And here's somebody else. Hebrew words are like molecules. Each letter contains a unique energy signature drawn from the first primordial light, a resonance of God's original act of creating. So there, it's like still sounding, still emanating still creating. There's a line in our daily prayer book, right? Umechadesh betuvo, umevetuvo, bechadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reishit. In God's tov, in God's goodness, God gives over the creation and recreation every moment. You hear the word Breshit at the end, the beginnings of them. It's like if God pulled the plug on this, we'd all disappear, not just the Zoom room, everything that we know, this whole experiment. By the way, is another book to read, which I just turned my teacher, Reb Daniel Siegel, onto, and he read it and he loved it. It's very accessible and it's very fun. It's called Mr. G. I might have mentioned it before. It was written by a nuclear scientist, or he's a physicist, a scientist, and he's Jewish. And I don't know that he studied any Kabbalah or any Jewish mysticism, but it's a flight of fancy. It's a beautiful midrash of before there was a before, and how God, along with some partners in crime, decide upon like what to create and how to go about it, which, he writes this thing. I'm sorry, I'm going on many tangents, but this is another thing that blows my mind. The grandson of the Baal Shem Tov. I'm trying to remember the teacher's name. I'll think of it while I'm giving over the teaching. Teaches that this world.
Fair?
What's that? No.
That's fair?
No.
No.
It's on my bookshelf, but I can't see over there. That this world that we live in is only one of the many worlds that God created, right? Now, this is in other midrashim before settling on this one. But also that when the letters, this is what we're talking about, which is why I'm remembering this, when the letters spewed forth out of the cosmic explosion of God speaking, maybe that's the Big Bang, right? When they came forth, they could have come together in any combination or permutation of letters, period. How they came together was what we see, which, as Reb Marcia goes on to say, actually, this is the journey, she says, to sacred speech. And why, like I said, Gematria makes sense to me. And when I say that line, as I was studying, preparing today, the journey to sacred speech, what came to mind? All the beautiful sounds in the world I ever heard. Maria, right? Say it loud and it's music playing. Say it soft and it's almost like praying. So there in a name, right, is everything that Reb Marcia and our Hasidic masters are talking about, that things become and then things are named, right? What does Adam do in our mythic story? What is Adam? I'm talking about Adam in Gan Eden. What is he given the job of doing? Yes, Chaya.
Naming all the positive qualities of everything he sees.
I like that. That's not
see.
what I'm referring to. I really like that, though. Anybody else? What is his job?
Wasn't it to name the creatures and the plant and the...
His job is to name the animals.
Yeah.
That's right. He's Dr. Doolittle. Well, Dr. Doolittle, he probably also talked to the animals, and he had a lot to do.
But
So,
Mark,
yeah.
I loved what Reb Marcia said about that, though. I think it's exactly what Chaya was saying. That, I mean, what I remember her saying about that is that it wasn't just giving names, but it was deriving the names from getting some sort of an essence, right?
Absolutely.
A positive essence of
That's right.
what the animals or the beings were.
That's right. She did that. Adam had that special. Thank you, Judy. It's that he had the ability to see into the essence of each of the creatures created, to see their name, their holy name embedded in them, and then to articulate and say out loud that that is what this is, right? This is a shur. That's an ox. This is a chamor. This is a, you're right, this is a donkey. This, he was be able to see, like you say, Judy, it's spiritual components of every animal. And what does that say about our names? Right? Do you? I'm sure many of you who've gone through, the Davin Leadership Training Institute know people, and you might have been one of them, who either use that occasion to finally name, embrace, and own a name, right? Or to change their name when they realized, oh, I'm not Moshe Bear really anymore, because now I've been, stripped naked and my new skin has grown. I'm going to take on a different name because it's more me. So it brings up the question of, actually brings up the, not a question. Well, I guess, does your name fit you? Does your name express your essence? Now, I could talk about my name, and this is a nice conversation actually, it's a nice conversation for now. So forgive me. Anybody want to answer that? How your name expresses one of your midot, one of your characteristics, or getting right down to the kishkis of it, your essence. Anybody? Chaya, go ahead.
I was one of those people that embraced a new name and went so far as to have my name legally changed. I felt as if Chaya was my Hebrew name, but I also felt that there's a midrash that you need to have God's name in your name. And so the Yud Hey Vav Hey is something that I've embraced in my name. But I also, in the midot, when I looked at my name, my middle name is Raphael, because I always view myself as a healer and embraced the Archangel Raphael. And Lerner is my grandfather's name. And I felt a kinship that he lost so many people in his family during the Holocaust, so embracing that. But as someone said, when you put my name together, it's Chaya Lerner. So it's like a higher, reaching up for higher knowledge and learning.
Beautiful. You're living out your name. Thank you for sharing that. Nancy.
So this is so amazing, because I've been going to a class with Rabbi David Zaslow in Ashland, Oregon. And this is exactly what we talked about this week. And so the homework he gave us was to really, he's talking about language and etymology, and to really find out what the meaning of our names are and our parents' names, and to develop our name as all those meanings put together. So I looked into it. So my Hebrew name is Rivka, and I have thought about changing my name because I don't feel that connected to Nancy, but my parents gave it to me. So, I'm kind of holding on to that. But so my Hebrew name is Rivka. I looked it up. One of the meanings is a strong connection. And my father's Hebrew name was Eliezer, is God has helped, or help of my God. And my mother's, I don't know that she had a Hebrew name, but her name was Pauline, which means small or young or humble. So to put all those together, I can come up with something that is like firmly connected to the humility of God's help.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, Nancy. And one more, Phyllis.
So I'm, as Deb knows, my dear friend from Toronto, I'm struggling with my name a bit in the context of Aleph. I'm in the Hashwal program, for those who don't know me, and which is fantastic. And I'm finding the same thing about becoming more contemplative, because the midah that I normally feel is me is Zerizut, a lot of energy, and the program's giving me a little bit more of Hodaya, I guess, Hodaya. But anyway, I'm trying to get more contemplative. But the point is, my name Phyllis, I feel like Nancy, and you don't hear too many Nancys or Phyllises anymore. It's not like Michael, you know. So it's kind of dated, but I love it, and in the sense because my parents gave it to me, and I was named for my father's father, who had passed just before I was born, Philip. And I don't think I had a Hebrew name. It was Fischela, because he was Fischel. They gave me like a Yiddish name, which to my English ears sounds like a fish. I don't even like fish. So I really didn't like the name in Yiddish. So when I went to Hebrew school, they had to give me a name, and they gave me Shoshana. I have no idea why, other than chlorophyll is like Phyllis means green leaf, actually. So I'm thinking maybe there's a green leaf connection to a rose. I have no idea. But they named me Shoshana when I was in, Mechina. So I've been Shoshana in Hebrew context. So when I go to Israel, I use Shoshana because it's easier for the Israelis to say I have a necklace. I go by Shoshana. So when I entered Aleph, I started using Shoshana. But I have a mixed world. I have a lot of my regular friends are part of Aleph. So right now I'm using Phyllis Shoshana. I'm using them both, which actually works with my initials, PSL, Phyllis Savar Levy, PSL, Phyllis Shoshana Levy. So I'm in the process. I'm in transition, shall we say. I have no idea where I'm going to go with it, but that's my name. Toda, thank you for listening.
Thank you for sharing.
And I could add that my American name is Michael Herbert. And as a physician, Mikael, who is like unto God, that could be a little bit dangerous, but I really believe that my caring for patients was my prayer. And my Hebrew name is Moshe Chaim.
Beautiful.
Which is interesting because in some of my national work with hospice and oncology, I was a leader. And I brought people to a point, and then the next group had to come in. Yet I found balance from Chaim to help me deal with all of the hospice patients dying. I focused the Chaim on their bereaved relatives. So whether that name was created for me or I've learned to interpret it as a description of my journey, it fits more and more each year.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And so in describing, in sharing that with us, Michael, I don't know if Reb Marsha says this, but it's a note that I made that what Adam is doing in the garden is he is ritualizing the bond that solidifies the connection, the spiritual source with the physical manifestation of, right? I'll say that again. Connecting basically heaven and earth, right? Of concretizing the bond between the physical manifestation and the spiritual source. And that, for me, is same thing is true for the intention for a bracha, to connect, right? The source, the physical thing that we are confronting, whatever. I'm actually thinking about what we're eating right now, of making that connection, right? And returning the favor in a sense, right? So I want to be mindful of time. And yeah, well, this is beautiful because there's a lot of names in it. I'm trying to figure out why I wrote down. Right. So I made a note to myself to end, or at some point, to sing the angel song, B'Shem Hashem, right? So I'm trying to remember why. And I think it's because that all that we're talking about is to remind our animal soul, and that's what our souls are referred to in the Tanya the first Lubavitch, the Rebbe, writes that book that really gets to the meat of source and physical life. It's to remind this animal soul of our source as celestial beings. And I'm being very careful with my words there, because it's part of it is based upon a story that I once heard a child say to his mom, that he was a disembodied soul, and he looked around for the woman that he wanted to be his mother.
Oh.
And in the next moment, he was in utero. So there are so many times in my life, and I suspect in yours too, that we have this sense of the eternality of the soul that, of course, that we pray about all the time. But more than that, the experience of that we are forever. And that these celestial beings, these angels that we speak of, all have names that fit them, right? Raphael, right? Gavriel, Uriel. If you know sing with me. B'Shem Hashem Elohai Yisrael B'Yemini Michael U'Shemoli Gavriel Milfanai Uriel Me'acharai Raphael V'al Roshi Shekhinah El. In the name of God. In the name of God, God of Israel. On my right is Michael, on my left is Gabriel, or on my right is Michael. On my right is Michael, and on my left Gabriel. In front of me is Uriel, behind me Raphael. In front of me is Uriel, behind me Raphael, and all around surrounding me Shechinat El. And all around surrounding me Shechinat El. Let's do it one more time in English. In the name of God, God of Israel, in the name of God, God of Israel. On my right is Michael, on my left Gabriel. On my right is Michael, on my left Gabriel. In front of me Uriel, behind me Raphael. In front of me is Uriel, behind me Raphael, and all around me, surrounding me, Shechinat El. All around, surrounding me, Shechinat El. Unable to perceive the shape of you, I find you all around me. Your presence fills my eyes with your love. It humbles my heart, for you are everywhere. And all around, surrounding me, Shechinat
Beautiful.
Thank you, everyone, for, as always, for your holy presence. It is a present to me. And I hope to see many of you this Shabbat morning when we will unpack a little bit about tzitzit being a reminder of all of this and the tzitzit lattice work that we peer through. And if we're so blessed, we're met in our gaze with Shechinat El. Laila Tov, everyone.
That's all.
Lila Tov. Reb